Number 5. Mick Foley didn't invent the move. Although Mick Foley is often synonymous with the Mandible Claw, you might be surprised to find out that he didn't actually invent the move. Foley's character did indeed bring the Mandible Claw to the mainstream, but its origins lay elsewhere. The move's invention is actually credited to Dr. Samuel Shepherd, who used his background in neurosurgery as inspiration. Samuel Shepherd's wrestling career was quite brief, wrestling only 40 matches between his debut in 1969 and his death in 1970. However, it's not his time as a wrestler that he's famous for. Before this, he was convicted of murder back in 1954 and was later cleared, with the case being so controversial that his life is considered the loose inspiration for the fugitive television series, an iconic 90s movie adaptation starring Harrison Ford. Number 4. Explaining how it works. Explaining the Mandible Claw to begin with is no easy task, but try explaining it to two of the most powerful wrestling promoters of all time. Before Foley was taught the move by legendary manager Jim Cornette, he pitched it as his new finisher to Cowboy Bill Watts, whose response was, "Why don't I just bite your fingers off?" Foley would also be met with a similar response when he tried to explain the move to Vince McMahon. McMahon would ask the same question, but this time Foley was ready with an answer, explaining that the move is actually a nerve hold that immobilizes his opponent's jaws. McMahon was convinced, and the rest is history as Mick Foley went on to make the move one of the most iconic throughout the WWE's Attitude Era. Number 3. Mr. Socko. Mr. Socko is literally more over than some younger talent nowadays, an actual sweat sock that Mick Foley would draw a face on, pull out of his pants, and apply to his hand before executing the Mandible Claw finisher. This was most often featured throughout Foley's time as Mankind, and the move went on to become one of the most iconic finishers during the Attitude Era. But it turns out that Mr. Socko becoming a part of Foley's act was actually a happy accident. It was initially intended to be a one-off joke in a segment with a bedridden Mr. McMahon whilst in hospital, but it turned out that McMahon's disgusted reaction to the idea of Mr. Socko helped get over the gimmick, as fans would begin to bring signs and chant for Mr. Socko throughout the following weeks. Number 2. Unique uses. Whilst the Mandible Claw is a unique move in itself, it can also be used in some fairly surprising ways. Mick Foley has had his fair share of punishment dealt to him, but in some cases he inflicted that pain upon himself. One such case came at WWE's Judgment Day 1998 pay-per-view, when Mankind faced off against Ken Shamrock. When the match drew to its close, Shamrock had Mankind locked in the ankle lock. Mankind refused to tap out for the first time ever in his career, and so decided to apply the Mandible Claw to himself, causing himself to pass out and denying the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, the satisfaction of making him submit. Number 1. Women are doing it for themselves. As Mick Foley retired, the Mandible Claw seemed to also go into retirement, but in recent years, stars such as The Fiend adopted the move to great success, but it seems that the women of professional wrestling want to continue the move's legacy in a new way. TNA's Wrestling Su Yung, whose Undead Bride character uses the move by applying a glove, similar to AEW's Britt Baker, who applies her own variation named the Lockjaw, which also ties in with her real-life dentistry background, making the move one of the most feared in the women's division. Wrestling purists often talk about doing more with less when inside the ring, and very few things embody that more than sticking your hand in someone's mouth until they tap out or pass out. It's the theatre of the absurd that pro wrestling embodies, especially if a sweat sock is involved.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more wrestling content.